Here we go. Hi, everybody. I just want to welcome you today to our Broker's Corner. It is February 1st, a very snowy February 1st, and today we are going to talk about contracts. Let's just hop right in with some of the most important pieces of what you need to know about contracts. In particular, we might focus a little on listing agreements today, but we can answer some questions on the back end about purchase agreements. But I decided to use this time based upon an incident that happened to me last week that was a surprise to me. So I don't want to assume anything. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I can see Robert Richardson. Are you a new agent?
Nope.
No. Okay. How long have you been doing business?
Over 10 years.
Oh my goodness. And you're totally up to speed. That's wonderful. Teddy, how long have you been doing business? Teddy P?
2 years.
2 years. Okay, so you're pretty up to speed. I know Mary Ellen, you're up to speed. Mitch, I know you are. Patricio, how long have you been doing business?
I'm brand new one.
Brand new?
1 month.
1 month. Okay, this is going to be very helpful. Okay, that's great. And Sam, I know this is always good for you to have a background in, and so I appreciate that. So let's start off with some key basics that I cannot believe I'm going to actually speak to, but it became readily apparent last week I needed to. And that is, if you take a listing, if somebody wants you to list their home, it requires 2 basic things. First of all, that you fill out a listing agreement. There's all kinds of other documents we're going to talk about today in the loop that are required for compliance, and I'm going to tell you the reasons why we require them for compliance. However, they must sign a listing agreement. We actually have, I've run into some agents that omitted that from their process for some reason, and it places us at severe risk. So number 1, you must have a listing agreement. And number 2, once you take that listing agreement, you must post it in the MLS that you've committed to post it in, okay? 2 things. And then as a side note, when you complete all the paperwork on the checklist, which we'll go through in a few minutes, the checklist, you must send it for review to compliance. And there is a button on dotloop that actually allows you to send all your documents to review, and you just kind of watch them go away. And then behind the scenes, we have people that do our compliance that will respond back to you if you're missing something or if a form is not filled out properly. As your broker, certain forms you need to send to me for signature on a listing, and those forms are: you need to send exclusive listing documents, a waiver of broker cooperation, which would be required with an exclusive listing, a waiver of broker cooperation, as well as the listing agreement itself, the MLS listing agreement. We primarily list in Garden State MLS territory, primarily, but there are others. And we'll talk about the others in a second. And delayed showing forms, or what they're now calling coming soon, must also be signed by me. And change forms. Garden State MLS has a change form process where if you want to change the listing price or you want to change the term of the listing, you know, the end date in particular usually is why you would change it. If you want to change the status to a status that's something other than attorney review, under contract, or sold, but you want to withdraw it, that change, whether it be a temporary withdrawal or a permanent withdrawal, I also need to sign those, okay? And those documents need to all get processed within 48 hours of taking that listing, 48 hours. Not when we're getting ready to get paid, or better yet, when the check comes in and now we tell you your check's in jail and we can't pay you because you haven't completed your paperwork. Okay, so, and there are reasons why we need to have the paperwork on file up front. And I can tell you all the reasons, but I'm sure you can make some assumptions. It has to do with good record keeping in case we got monitored by the state regarding our files. File as the office. And so our filing system for the office is dotloop. You may be using DocuSign, which is fine. all wonderful, but you're going to need to create a loop at present within .loop for your compliance piece. You can do whatever you like. You sign or anything.
Philanthropy and charitable donations.
Themselves.
Yeah, Sally, you might have to just mute a few folks. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here.
I'm getting a lot of feedback. I think that just stopped the feedback. How's that?
Yep,
okay.
Better.
Oh, that's so much better. Okay, so that's the preamble. That's the preamble. So there were a lot of things that I just talked about that maybe aren't so self-evident, or I use terms that you're not familiar with. And so now we'll go into some levels of detail as to what they are. Let's talk about MLSs right now. As I stated, Garden State MLS is our primary MLS because it sits firmly within our territory. Garden State MLS can cover the entire state almost, because if you go into Garden State, you'll see that they'll allow you to put a listing in probably almost anywhere in the state of New Jersey by county. But the issue that we have is that that's not the Garden State MLS primary territory. Garden State MLS primary territory is Morris, Somerset, Essex, or parts of Essex, and we'll talk about Essex in a second, Passaic, Sussex, Warren, Hunterdon. I think that's probably all of it. But you can list in Camden, Burlington, Monmouth, Middlesex, etc. So let's talk about Middlesex right now. Middlesex has their own MLS. It used to be called the Middlesex MLS. It is now called Central Jersey MLS, CJ MLS. If you list anything in Middlesex County, I hope that you would list it in Garden State MLS. That's great, but you must list it in CJ MLS. And CJ MLS has their own proprietary listing paperwork. So we have provided that for you in the loop. You must use their listing paperwork. And their paperwork is very stringent and the requirements are very stringent. They want something in within 24 hours of posting. And they are very fine, happy, that if you do not comply with their rules, they are only too happy to pass a significant fine on to you, okay? If you don't fill it out completely, they'll pass along a fine to you. One of the things that trips most agents up with Central Jersey MLS is that they don't fill in the terms that they'll accept: cash, VA, FHA, conventional, VA, USDA, you know, whatever types of loan programs or whatever they will accept for the property that needs to be filled in. Okay, so that's for Middlesex County. For New Jersey MLS, which is primarily located within Bergen County, they touch upon parts of Essex where that if you list a property in Belleville, Bloomfield, etc., you are required to list the property in New Jersey MLS as well, or you could be fined. They're not as fine happy, and if you make a mistake the first time around because you didn't know, they'll probably forgive you the fine. The fines are significant, but we don't want to get in that situation, okay? If you go down to the shore, if you go to Monmouth Ocean Territory, now you've got the opportunity for two different MLSs down there that could touch upon each other. There is Monmouth Ocean MLS, which is the one that I happen to belong to list in, but there's also what used to be called Trend, which is now called Bright MLS, that covers between Pennsylvania, parts of Pennsylvania on the eastern side, like Bucks County, for example, which is right over the 202 line for all of us, cutting all the way down to the Jersey Shore and touching down to actually Camden and Burlington. It does not cover Cape May County and right above it, but it covers everything else. And I have territory maps that I'm going to post. Sam's already posted, I think, the CJ MLS territory map. Is that correct? On our website. You want to talk about our website for 1 second? Give it a little. Why they would want to know about it?
Yeah, of course. So real quick, So anything that we're talking about today, any of these maps, anything like that, additional resources, you name it, calendar, recordings, all that, go to kwtownsquare.net. And I'll keep pushing folks that way. But yeah, anything from today, we'll be sure to post up there as well.
This recording will be put there, but also materials that may be helpful in listing. So just please keep in mind, if you're going to take a listing and you're going to do it the right way with paperwork and posting in the MLS, if it's located in an area that is not close into the office in Somerset or Morris County is where I would tell you, or Union, Somerset, Union, or whatever, those 3 primary counties, or Hunterdon, I guess 4. You need to be very, very aware that you may need to post it in another MLS. So what does that mean to you as an agent? You will need to belong to another MLS besides Garden State MLS. And there are costs associated with it. Debbie G is a great resource that if you don't know what to do about joining another MLS, she knows what the paperwork is. It's for some MLSs, they consider me the broker. And I know you all consider me the broker, but I actually am only a managing broker for the company, managing. And what that means is I take care of the day-to-day. I take care of everything on the day-to-day. We do have a broker of record, and that is Marianne Brand. But Marianne does not do any of the business on a day-to-day level. And in fact, the only reason that I ever need something from Marianne is her signature, okay? She is not running business, but I didn't want to take the liability because they don't pay me enough to take the liability as the broker, but I love doing the job. So I get to be the managing broker and take care of everything. And Marianne gets to keep the liability.
You know what I have to do? I have to get my parents to change their address on their license.
It's a perfect arrangement. So for some MLSs, I am allowed to sign as the managing broker and approve things. For other MLSs, I am not. I don't expect you to keep track of that. I will secure signatures if they're not allowing my signature in a certain territory. I think for like, Bright, I don't belong to Bright personally. Garden State MLS, I belong to and I can sign anything, okay? But New Jersey MLS, for example, I belong, but they still require Marianne's signature. But we have a way of making that happen, all right? You don't need to know, you just need to know that there could be another broker's name thrown in there, and that's the reason why. It was a cost-saving adventure so that we could pass more money back to you in profit sharing. Instead of having me belong to all of the MLSs and all the associated fees, I belong to those that we use primarily. The ones that we use in less than 1% of the cases, I do not belong to. It's just not cost effective. Okay, so we got through that. We understand MLSs, territories, and where we list. That's great. Let's talk now about the paperwork and the loop. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if this works, and go right into the loop. Before I do that, does anybody have a question? Okay. Am I going too slow? Somebody answer me?
Nope. You good?
I'm good?
All good.
All right. Thank you.
Sally, real quick though, do you have anyone else in the waiting room on your screen? Do you
I
see?
do not.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Jesse's trying to hop on, so I'm working with her to get on.
thank you.
Mhm.
That's all. I didn't see her pop up, but I was talking. You know how that goes.
Yep.
When I start talking, we're all in trouble. So I need to find what I'm trying to share. Please let it be this. And that is not it. Okay, let me ask you something. What do you see on your screen right now? Sam?
See the dot, your dot loop screen.
That's fabulous. That's exactly what I wanted everybody to see. Okay. So I'm actually in a loop for a listing of mine that's already sold. Okay, that I did I guess it was this year. Okay. And I just want to allow you to peruse a complete loop to see the types of things that ended up in this loop upon closing, because as you can see, the status is sold, closed, okay? So I had a buyer folder for a last name party of Wilson. I'm the listing agent on this particular loop, by the way, folks. So I created a buyer folder, and in that buyer folder, I have all kinds of things. That town requires a certificate of potability for well water and the smoke cert for the CO, inspections that took place, the smoke cert itself, the summary of expenses for the estate that I did, whatever attorney review concluding letter that needed to go in there, mortgage commitments, stuff about termite canisters, the buyer's inspection, and as you can see, all kinds of lovely, lovely things, lead paints, etc. Get down to the listing end of the program here, and we've got the checklists for listing, and you can see I've got a fairly complete file. Well, it is complete, it was compliant, let me put it that way, but you can see it's pretty long. There's a lot for sellers to sign. So let's go into the checklist. Sam, just let me know if this checklist comes up on the screen. Does it?
Yep, looks good.
I'm so happy with this. Okay. So in dotloop, we have a checklist for listings. And I'm going to just walk through this so that you understand the why. Some people don't care and they just want to check it off, and I love that. But some people are like me, I challenge you as to why do you need that? So for those of you that are more like me and want to know the why, I just want to quickly explain why each and every one of these documents is needed. I don't ask for extra. I'm not looking, I have a lot of extra in my file as I just showed you, but I don't ask for extra from the agent. I would encourage you to make this your primary spot for filing things. You can always, dump it into, I dump it into my own computer by creating a big PDF, and then I've got everything permanently. But I encourage you to put everything there, one place, one filing place. So CIS, that is required by law, okay? We all know the consumer information statement. The first time we speak to a client, the first time, we need to go through the consumer information statement. We need to share with them how they could be represented by you in a real estate transaction. You must do this, whether you meet them at an open house, whether you're talking to them on the phone. And the why about that, while it's legal, it's legally required, and that's why it's in our file. I have a lot of people that are having procuring cause issues right now. And they've been doing business for a very long time. And for whatever reason, they've dropped the CIS out of their repertoire of something that they automatically know they need to do first up because they've been doing business so long. And now push comes to shove and they're in a procuring cause problem and they don't have a leg to stand on because they didn't present the CIS. Does the seller need to sign it or a buyer need to sign it? No. Not when you first meet them. For our file here, when you're doing a listing agreement, yes, it needs to be signed, okay? We can talk about that at length at another training class. Listing agreement, by law, it is required and it must be signed by the seller. It also must be complete. We'll go through a listing agreement before we leave this program today. The input sheet for Garden State or the MLS sheet signed by the seller. It doesn't matter. Either one will do, but it must be in the file. Why? Because the Garden State MLS requires it. It's an MLS requirement. The discrimination law handout, the Attorney General letter. Why? Because it's a law. We must share this. And right now I have an issue today that I'm working regarding a landlord and age discrimination. And fortunately, we have this particular document signed and in the file, okay? Seller's disclosure must be provided and completed by a seller. Why? Because your E&O is dependent upon it. Your errors and omissions insurance will not kick in if you do not have this on file. And it is not okay to do a waiver in any situation. You may only have the seller fill out unknown, 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 unknown via an estate, and there's a place to sign as, executor or a guardian or administrator on the form, but it must be completed and it must be in the file. Lead paint, brochure, and disclosure. If the property was built before 1978, no exceptions, it must be filled out. It is a federal law. We will go through a lead paint disclosure and proper fill out in a minute, which I had done in the last sales rally, I believe. Okay, home warranty brochure and order form. It must be in the file It must be completed. It automatically fills out to decline the coverage. The reason why, you need it for your E&O insurance. If you do not have it, E&O insurance may not kick in. A copy of the MLS sheet itself, if you didn't use it as your input form, you now need it in there because we just need it. It seems reasonable because it's a listing. It's an office policy. Permission to advertise. It is an office policy. It allows you to advertise the sale of that listing. Okay? Informed consent to dual agency required. Why? By law, by Garden State MLS, and by policy issues, all three, because if you do not have it signed, you cannot advertise this listing as a dual disclosed agent. You must advertise it as a seller's agent, and we cannot pay anybody in our office if they bring the buyer. That's not happening, folks. All of our listings will be dual disclosed agent. If you as a listing agent should not be representing the buyer because it's your property, and there are some exceptions that I will discuss with you personally on your listing, that still will be a dual disclosed agency listing. It just, you will be excluded from that. Okay? Because why? Because we are 200 agents strong in our office, and we want to make sure, and we have the largest market share in Somerset County, and we want to make sure that we get these listings sold, and it would be a grievous error to not allow our agents to sell your listings, or allow you. If it is a listing, you are allowed to sell as long as it's not your own personal property. Okay, copy of the survey if you can get it from the client. After you get through the process, there's other things to do. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on taking the listing for now. So that is the checklist. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So the next thing I want to go into is I want to look at a listing agreement. Let me find our listing agreement. Here we go. Okay, does everybody see the listing agreement on their screen? Okay, great. Here. All right, so there are a few key areas. This is a Garden State MLS listing. This property was located in Garden State MLS territory in Long Valley, Morris County. So there wasn't a need for anything else. And what is the most important is, who is the seller? Where is the property? Who are we? What is the price it's being listed for? What is the term? Okay, the start and the stop date of the listing. What agent is representing the seller? What relationship do we have here, as I talked about, seller or landlord's agents if the opportunity arises? This is how we should be taking listings. Okay, if you have any questions, if something else comes up, just give me a call. Offer of cooperation. This is the place that I need everybody to focus on. We do not pay sub-agents, ever. It automatically populates with a no. That's what SA stands for on the Garden State MLS. We do pay buyer's agents, BBs, and we do pay transaction brokers, TBs, okay, in the listing. And this is the minimum at which we pay them out, the minimum. A buyer's broker at 2.5% minus the 150 MLS fee, and a transaction broker at 1.5% minus 150. Again, these are the minimums. You may pay them more. You may not pay them less. Are we clear? So that when we get back down to the listing, this was an estate, and the broker approved a less than 5% listing for the estate at 4.5%. Okay. Our office policy states that we will do 5% or above listings, with 4.5% if the listing agent sells both sides at a variable rate. If it's anything less than that, you need broker approval. This had broker approval. The owner allows a lockbox. The cooperating percentage that we pay out is the higher of the two in this case, the 2.5% minus the 150 to work with cooperating brokers. Signature, signature, signature required. What you probably didn't pay attention to lately is the fact that there's a lot of language surrounding this agreement here and on the entire second page. People have asked me questions about, suppose the seller sells their property themselves during the listing period, what happens? Well, The listing agreement tells you what happens. You refer to paragraph 8, the owner agrees to pay listing agent the commission. If the property is sold, leased, exchanged, or otherwise transferred by or through the listing agent or through any other source, including the direct sale lease by owner before the expiration date. That is your protection, broker protection on the commission itself. You go to paragraphs on the back and it talks about broker protection and how long it goes for. Granting an exclusive right to sell. An exclusive right to sell does not mean that the seller can sell it and not pay us a commission. Exclusive agency would. You can dig back to your days of taking your salesperson test, and you may remember all these flavors, or you may not. But today, the ones that I need you to remember are the ones we are exclusive right to sell, or else we don't really need the listing. If there's some other arrangement you need to make, you need to talk to me as the broker. Okay, is everybody okay with what needs to be filled out on the listing agreement and the why?
Sally, you mentioned, we have some new agents or newer agents here. Maybe
Yes.
you should touch on it a little more. You mentioned in terms of the commission structure,
Yes.
possibility of a variable rate if you sell the
Yes.
listing on behalf of, both parties.
Yes.
Could you go into that a little bit and tell everyone where on this form you would indicate what those
Well,
changes in commission would be in that
on
event?
this form, the only place for the commission itself is in section 5 on the listing agreement, okay? So it would be filled in here 5%, and then in parentheses 4.5% of the listing agent sells, okay? And that would be satisfactory. But when you're filling out Garden State MLS, there's actually a section in Garden State MLS where it's a mandatory field where it asks you, is it variable rate or not? You have to answer yes or no. If you did something like that, you would have to answer yes. Okay, otherwise if it was just flat commission like this is, the answer is no, there's no variable rate. Okay, variable rate, just so that we all understand it further than how to fill it out. If you were asked by another agent as a listing agent, what is the variable rate, you are required to disclose. Let me say that one more time. You are required to disclose. It is not something you can keep close to the vest. If it's variable rate and somebody asks you what the variable rate is, you must answer. Okay? Does that help, Mitch? Was that what you were hoping for?
Yes, thanks, Sally.
Okay. All right, so let's go on to another form. If I can get this to go backwards, I can go on to another form. There you go. I talked a little bit about the lead paint for just a second. And so I want to go to the lead paint. I'll go to this one, hopefully. Okay, so here's a couple of things, and we talked about this in the sales rally, but I just want to do it quickly again. It's imperative that you fill out this form correctly. If you do not fill out this form correctly, there is an opportunity for a fine of up to $16,000. Here's what I will say. Unless you were selling houses in the $600,000 mark and you're at 100%, $16,000 will wipe out any commission that you can possibly have, okay? Will wipe out your commission and you will pay 100% of your commission to the state of New Jersey or the feds because you violated this requirement. So let's focus on this to make sure that we understand how to get it done. The property address must be completed. The seller must complete sections 3 and 4, okay? And in section 3, question number 1 is the presence of lead paint. They either know about it or they have no knowledge. One of those boxes must be checked, must. And the seller must initial next to that statement. And if there's 2 people on the listing agreement, because it's husband and wife and it's the marital primary home, then they both must initial, not just one of them. The second question is, are there records available? In this case, no records available. It must be checked and initialed. The last statement is if there's any change to this information, they will share that information. They must initial there as well. Then they must sign, the listing agent must sign. The rest of the portions are for completion by the buyer. You should post this on MLS in the documents section. You should, when you are completing any contract, make sure that the lead paint is a part of that contract. It should be checked and it should be completed at that time, because if the lead paint is not, you are still subject up to a fine of $16,000 based upon the time in which the lead paint was completed. Okay, so I know from experience, and I'm sure Mary Ellen, who used to do our compliance, who is on the call, can back me up on this one, that once you fill out an offer or once you complete a listing agreement with a client, a seller is unlikely to complete anything. You know, you'd be chasing after them till the cows come home. But at the time you're taking a listing, they'll fill out anything you want because they want it done, okay? A buyer, when you're filling out an offer, they'll complete anything you want because they want it done. After the fact, your chances of success are pretty horrible, and they get worse and worse the more time that goes on. Do you really want to not be able to put your head on the pillow at night and worry about whether your commission gets wiped out with a $16,000 fine? I doubt it, because we've got better things to worry about in our life. Okay, so I'm backing out of this form. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in here that's really, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong part. Imperative. Waiver, everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Are there any other forms that you would like me to cover in detail when it comes to a listing, folks? I mean, go into and explain the form. Have you all read the contracts lately? I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years come April. And I have to be honest with you, I'm a little weird animal. I really like this job. I like all this stuff. So unlike most of you that hate it, it's a necessary evil. But even I, who am really up to date on what's in those contracts, I read these contracts over and over again. I do. I take the opportunity.
Sally,
Yeah.
I think, can you mention the purpose of the seller's name and telephone number for the newer agents, why that's so important?
Of course, of course. Let me pull that form. So here's the form that Mary Ellen just referred to, seller's name and telephone number disclosure. And as you can see by reading this, it's whether or not the seller has instructed you to withhold name and telephone number. Please keep in mind that on the MLS, Garden State MLS, that the tax record will automatically populate the seller's name. You can remove the seller's name when you're doing the listing online, but in order to do so, you need this form signed off on, stating that they didn't want their name there. And I never want the seller's telephone number included in a listing. Why? Because I don't want anybody calling my seller directly for any reason, whether it be to tender an offer, try to poach the listing. I don't really care. I'm in control. It's my listing. I don't want it to live with this listing going forward years down the road. Okay? So I make sure that that form is signed. Anything else? No? Is everybody done for the day? We're at a half-hour mark. I'm happy to go into a sales contract if you'd like today, or we can do it at a different time. I've accomplished what I needed to accomplish today on listing agreements. How does everybody feel? You ready to go out there and attack that snow? Somebody answer me.
Job well done, Sal.
Okay. How about we end for today? Does that sound okay? We'll just call this the listing agreement section of the program. Okay? So
I do have a question.
yes.
I'm a new agent, and when we put it to a revision of our documents, and I know they'll be reviewing everything, but if I miss something in any of those papers, they send me a note, hey, I missed something, or they only will check if everything is signed.
No, you will get, Mariana, who used to do our compliance a while back, I mean, she, as well as the people that do it today, they'll tell you what's wrong. They don't just check the things that are good and be silent on what you didn't provide. They'll actually write you a note and tell you what's wrong, what's missing, what you need to do.
Yeah.
And the note
Because I
comes
guys get
directly
already.
through Dotloop.
For example, for the lead paints,
Yeah.
if I miss something, I mean, when they review, they will let me know that I missed something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will. You don't want to be in that situation in the lead paint, because the lead paint's one of the most difficult documents I find for people to get signed. I really do. But no, they'll let you know. They're very meticulous when it comes to the check, everything. Initials not where they need to be, signatures not where they need to be, elections not where they need to be, the check boxes. They are very, very detailed in their review.
Oh, I see.
Okay, trust me.
Sal, can I ask, I'm going to open up a can of worms here.
Oh God, sure.
On a contract, the last contract I wrote,
Mhm.
the new thing is no home inspection, no appraiser, but the last home inspection, they wanted to waive the entire home inspection. I said, what about for environmental
Uh-oh, you froze up, Mary Ellen.
or structural? And they're like, no, 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 no. Did I freeze up on you? Did you hear me?
Yeah, just, I think I heard what you said. What you said is the new thing in contracts is people waiving inspections, and then you asked, did you mean waiving it except for environmental, structural, and safety? And then go on?
So is that okay for me to just ask the buyer, do you want to put it in for that? Do I keep my mouth shut, or do I
Okay, so Mary
have
Ellen,
that discussion?
good question. Let me explain a little bit about Mary Ellen's role. Mary Ellen, on this particular contract, were you the true agent or were you assisting an agent?
Assisting an agent.
Okay, so it's a little bit different. Mary Ellen helps a lot of people become successful in this business because she takes care of their paperwork meticulously. She has a little business doing that if you need some help, she's there for you. Okay, you like the plug? Okay. And we need people that can do that because there are some people that can't tackle paperwork or don't want to. They'd rather leverage it, and it's good that we have people that can do that. In this case, you need to go off of what the listing agent wanted you to do. You know, you're fulfilling for them. If you're acting as the agent at the time, you should always ask the buyer exactly what they mean by waiving an inspection. Did you truly mean waiving all inspections? Or did you know, and you're not going to do an inspection, or are you doing one for informational purposes? That's still doing one. I'm sorry, it's still doing one. It hasn't changed a darn thing about the contract. Or are you doing it for major structural, safety, and environmental? That hasn't changed either, because if you really read the New Jersey contract for purchase that we have loaded in .loop, and it is the NJR form, the New Jersey Realtors form, that's what the contract says. The contract doesn't talk about a rip in a screen or a little crack in a window. It talks about, or a chip in a tile. It talks about major structural, environmental, or safety issues only. And an inspection for informational purposes is an inspection for all of those items. And it is a contingency that allows anybody to get out of the contract if they don't like the findings, which is fair. Now, personally, and as your broker, I shudder when I think about us acting as dual agents. It's our listing, and the buyer is somebody that we're working with as well, or we're working with a buyer that happens to be one of our listings. We're not the listing agent, and we advise people to waive inspections. Oh my God, that just terrifies me from a legality standpoint. It terrorizes me, but it is what's happening out there for people to win bids. I will tell you that. It is happening. So I handle it very carefully. If this is where you were going, Mary Ellen, I handle it very carefully because I never want to, especially in a dual agent, but for me, it doesn't matter if I'm dual agent or not. I never want to have a buyer give up a right. That's a right. Our contracts come with two standard contingencies: mortgage and inspection. We could add additional contingencies, home sale, you know, other things, but they come standard with those two contingencies.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Marielle?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else?
I got one
Yeah.
related to that.
Okay.
In the case if I'm a listing agent and it's a situation is like highest and best offers, and is that okay as a listing agent to ask to give me some like a waivers, like a no inspections, or
Well,
it's okay to do it?
the answer is it happens. The answer is it happens. And so there's nothing legally that bars you from asking that, okay, to answer your question directly. There's nothing legally that says you can't state that as the listing agent. You have a highest and best scenario going on, and you advise all participants in the bid process, all buyer's agents, the seller is looking for no inspection. If that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing. My editorial comment before was related to the shudder that it puts down my spine as to advising a buyer on one of my company's properties not to inspect, and God forbid something bad happens. A lawsuit is going to be horrendous. Okay, so there's nothing legally that says you can't. Okay?
Okay, I see.
Nothing. And if you're relaying what your seller has told you to relay, I'm looking for a contract without any inspections, well, that's how I would phrase it. I wouldn't be phrasing it that you were looking for that, but this is what the seller is requesting.
Oh, I see.
If you position it that way, and that's really all you are, is a conduit for your seller, really, at the end of the day, right, guys? I know we give a lot of advice and assistance. I know we do. I do. But at the end of the day, I'm carrying out my seller's wishes, right? So the seller has requested. I know it sounds like a nuance, but the seller has requested. This is what the seller is looking for. The optimum contract my seller would love is one without any inspections, without any appraisals, and cash. Can you do it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you for laughing at that. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we're good, right? Okay, and I'm opening up bids for anybody that would like to come by and do my driveway for me today, okay? It's nice and long. There's at least, 12 inches out there, and I really don't want to go out and snow blow. So give me a call later if you're interested.
I will do that if you will get this dog to go to the bathroom out in the snow. That is still my trouble every time it's.
You dig? You gotta dig. You gotta give it a circle to run around in.
I know.
Okay.
He doesn't want to.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe. Stay warm.
Thanks, Al.
And thank
Thanks,
you.
Sally.
You.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.